Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have a good friend here today on the show. His name is John Kozma. He is a producer and CEO of Bang Productions locally here in Charleston, South Carolina. And I know John because he called me up one day and said he was looking for a energy healer, Reiki teacher, and he told me he looked at 10 different people and he decided to call me. So when we started talking on the phone, we instantly hit it off and we talk like we're old friends and we just met.
Yeah, had a lot of well, thank you for having me on the show. And we had a lot of very relatable conversations in that first phone call.
Yeah, the thing that I love about you is I can tell you the craziest, wonkiest experience and you just take it all in.
Hmm.
It's like you're open-minded enough that you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Even if you don't get it, you'll say that's interesting.
Hmm.
So John had me on his podcast. It's called the Unimpressed Podcast. And we're interested in talking about spirituality and the possible healing modalities and options out there for everyone. And today you're going to talk about your experience with shamanic mushrooms. You went on a journey.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
walk us into how that happened.
Well, I've been in the entertainment business for, I don't know, a long time. One of my good friends, I've known, I think, since I was 20 years old, Eric Neese. Uh, Through the years, he he introduced me to a lot of different types of people. Met a shaman, supposable shaman from Estonia. He introduced me to. We have a good friend who created a superfoods company called Purium that has probably the best foundation, the best structure for using foods for healing. And we actually did. I found today I was cleaning out my stuff that when we moved from New Jersey, because we were in New Jersey outside Manhattan for 12 and a half years. And we moved down here and I found some stuff of old, like things we developed, because we developed a lot of programming and television ideas that we pitched to networks. And there was one, I think it was maybe '04, '05, or no, '07, somewhere in that range. But we did a sizzle reel called The Healer, about Eric. And fast forward, we've been trying to do this, put out this type of narrative for a long time. And I don't know if I completely understood it then, but the narrative was so far ahead of the curve. It's still ahead of the curve today,
Yes.
um, which is very, very interesting. And when Eric brought me into this world, probably the first 8 to 10 years, meeting some of these people like Dave Sandoval, using foods to heal your body. And the foods that he uses are preventative measures to help prevent diseases and things like that. And I didn't really pay attention to him, but then when I understood the foundation of it, understood how it really works, it just, those things started resonating with me. And then I started looking and going down this path a little more. And during that time, for about 7, 8 years, Eric had always tried to get me to do a shamanic mushroom journey or ayahuasca journey. And I didn't want to do it. I just never did it. And then he called me. I was in New York. He was in LA. And he gave me a call and he's like, hey, I have this couple out in Malibu up on the Forest Canyon. So if you're in Malibu driving down, I guess is it Pacific Coast Highway, you make a right and go up La Flores Canyon. I think it's La Flores Canyon Boulevard. And there was a couple up there, and one guy, he proclaimed to be a channeler, and his wife organized these, I don't know, these events. Like he supposedly channeled this Indian, and he would talk to 25 people, and then they would do these shamanic mushroom journeys and so forth. So he's like, this is a TV show. You got to come out here, film it, do a shamanic mushroom journey with us. And I gave in and said, hey, I'm going to LA. And headed out there, Malibu, California, and posted up for a couple days and hung out with these people. And that's when I did the journey for the first time. So
this was in a group of people.
Actually, it was the one guy and his wife, right? And then it was Eric and then this girl. So it was just, I think it was just three of us doing the mushrooms. But what they would do, when you take these mushrooms, they would come, when you're under this state of the mushrooms, they would come talk to you. And you were supposed to talk about your feelings and all the things that, all this stuff all these issues that you supposedly have is supposed to come out.
So you're saying the couple comes and talks to you while you're in this state?
Correct.
Okay.
A couple, yes. And being the first time, meeting some of these people along the way, being the first time, I said, okay. So we sit there, we hold hands, me, Eric, and this girl, we hold hands, we take the mushrooms, and then we go lay on the couch. And this guy's walking around his house and he's ringing a bell. He's like, release the hooks, release the hooks, release the hooks. And I stand up. I said, release what hooks? And he said, you would be the guy to stand up. So he walks me outside and lays me down on this like astroturf in their like backyard, and there's a tree, and it had all this weird, I guess, hippie shit, you would say, around me. And when I was under the state, now they said you're going to see things. So if you're ever in California and you see these, you drive up these roads and you see how the walls and the mountains are, it's like a dirt bank, right? These dirt banks in between these roads and in the mountains and so forth. And in these dirt banks, to me, it looked like these swirls. I saw all these swirls like that I'd never seen before under the state. So that was the first thing I remember seeing. And then the girl that lived in this house and was doing these journeys and these meetings and so forth, she comes to me and she says, this is where we're going to talk about your problems. And I turn around and look at her, and she looked like the devil. She had the horns, red, the red face, everything looked exactly like the devil. I didn't say two words to her. I cut her completely off. I walked away from her, went back, went over there, laid down. And I can remember Riz coming by, whispering stuff in my ear and so forth. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, I felt like it was in a very, very dark place. And then it's, I started having a conversation with somebody for like 2 hours. And they're like, you can do what you want to do. It's like, okay, check. And I kept telling them, you are very powerful, check. And it was like I was almost like a computer program. I was like, check, yes, check, yes, check, right? And then I can remember they were like, we're going to protect you from these people. And it was like a tribe of people came down and were walking around me. And I can remember these rattles. It was like a. So while these rattles are circling me, I continue to have this conversation about what I could do. And I could just remember going up certain levels. Like I can remember, I think Obama was the president at the time. And I can remember my mind going like, you can do more than the president. And my mind was like, it was weird. Like my mind was going above like a presidential type status. I remember that very distinctly. Um, and that was interesting to say the least. And then, after these being told of what I could do, and you can do anything in the world, and that's when some of the spiritual stuff, and it's almost like being in that place. I went from a dark place to a very light place. And then, they started talking to me about God. They said, you don't know the power of God. And when we were having that conversation, I can remember this like energy, and it was like friction. It was almost like electricity on the ground. And it was just a constant while they were telling me about spirituality and the power of God and so forth. And Eric was there. My friend, and Eric looked like a dragon to me. And that was 11 years ago. And that kind of came to fruition 10, 11 years later, because I never told Eric anything about the experience, which was very, very interesting. So see Eric, my friend I've known since I'm 20, he looks like a dragon, and that was in my head for a long time, and I didn't know if it was good or bad. I really contemplated what that was. And at the time, I think Eric was in a very dark place because he got upset because somehow those people made him get upset with me during this journey. And I didn't know why. It's almost like there was some type of I don't know, when jealousy or some kind of jealous reaction from Eric, and I don't know where that came from. I've never asked him about that until this day. But I think there was some narrative put in his head that wasn't good. And I can remember, these people also telling me that you're a king, saying you're a king, you can do whatever you want to do, and just kept repeating these things to me. And like I said, it was almost like a computer download. So coming out of that, I never told Eric what I saw of him. I never told Eric what I saw of that girl, because at the time Eric was living with these people. And I don't know, come out of that, it was a very interesting experience. I think it pushed my mind to a different level. 6 months later, I told Eric, I said, did you get rid of the devil bitch? All right. And then he backtracks and tells me that these people took money from him, that they were somewhat fraudulent in how they did business, because they would have several people up to their house, and like 25 people at a time, 3 or 4 days a week, and charge these people, $20 a head to hear this guy talk. So they had somewhat of a business. And they, like I said, they ended up stealing money from Eric. And she would do these journeys with Eric and try to do things to him under this state, because he was a celebrity. But I never told Eric about the experience. What he looked like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Eric got married, and I didn't see Eric for like 7-8 years, because this marriage he was in, he's divorced now. This marriage he was in, that looked very weird to me. Very, very, very weird. It seemed like it wasn't a match. And fast forward to March of last year, after not seeing Eric for a long time, he comes and sees me here in Charleston, South Carolina. And my wife was my witness, and I told her what I saw 11 years ago. And Eric had been in Peru doing these ayahuasca journeys. And I told him what I saw. And then first he tells me that he's doing these ayahuasca journeys in Peru. He'd done like probably too many of them. I think he does too many of them, but he told me that this dragon keeps showing up, and he's been fighting this dragon, and he was fighting it, and then finally the dragon tells him that I'm here to protect you, I'm here to guide you, blah blah blah. And then Mimi being my witness and me seeing him look like a dragon 11 years ago, I said, well, that's what I saw 11 years ago during this shamanic mushroom journey. So that came full circle. So my eyes didn't lie to me about who he was and what he was. And it didn't lie to me about who the blonde girl was and what they were doing. Is, I guess, when my sensitivities were so heightened, these things were revealed to me.
Well, it's like you were looking at them, but you saw behind the mask, right? Or you saw behind the facade and saw who they really were.
Absolutely. And then my life, when I did that journey, my life changed. My business, I don't know, my business started growing. I looked at things a lot different. And it was almost like I tapped into some knowledge that nobody knew, in a way. So I've been since that experience, I've been kind of a trailblazer with my business, and been ahead of the curve. And I had a ahead of a curve thought process about how things can be done in this modern day time.
So do you feel like you can see through people's masks now better after this journey?
Yeah, I really do. I think my first instincts tells me a lot. I think sometimes I've questioned myself too many times, and went down a rabbit hole and tried to overthink who somebody was sometimes. But all in all, yeah, I think I can recognize people pretty quickly.
Do you think that was the result of the journey too?
I think I had that. I think I had it pretty much. I think I had those instincts all the time. But I think the journey kind of brought it together and made it more powerful than what it was, and opened my mind up to a lot of things,
Yeah, because it really showed you in an obvious way how to look at people, or you have this ability to look at people and see past the front that they may have or the mask that they have.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of things too, like that I will, a lot of things that I will assume, I guess I'll use the word assume about people, usually comes true 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, so that's interesting as well.
Yeah, so maybe more prophetic, what I call prophecy. You can predict what might happen, or
Yeah, I mean,
mm,
yeah, these decisions I make sometimes, I don't know what they mean, and they may not seem like the right decision, but usually they work out in the long run, even though I may question those decisions.
yeah. Well, it's the same concept as following your intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
You follow your intuition, there's no reasoning. It could be more feeling, this is what feels right, or this is what feels right to me right now. So that's what I'm going to pursue, or that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, but I think a lot of people say they, Eric does these journeys all the time, but I think once I tapped into it, I don't know, I don't know if I need to do it that again, maybe another time or something. But I think once you resonate that thought process, um, you just try to, I guess, improve it along the way. if
Yeah,
that
I think
makes sense.
there's various ways you could get information like that, and you got it directly while you were doing the mushrooms, but I've gotten information because I used to get a lot of readings from people, and they would
Mhm,
tell me the same things over and over again.
mhm,
Now, one of the messages I've gotten is, "You already know what to do."
mhm,
Like, almost, "You don't need this reading, Tina. You already know what to do, just do it."
mhm.
Which always makes me laugh because I'm like, "Okay, well, but I'm paying this person, so tell this person, give them something." Besides, Tina already knows what she's doing, but I think that's good because I used to get a message years ago that I was just beginning, like I was just starting,
Mhm.
you know, like a group of women would show up and they would say, "Oh, Tina's just starting this journey." But I was like chomping at the bit to get into it.
Mhm. Well, I've never, you said you see people, and that's one thing I've never done. I've never, I guess I saw people for what they were in real time, but I've never see people outside of that, you know. And when I was under that state, I just saw energy and I heard voices, but I didn't see anything. So I'm trying to say, like, what does that mean? You
Well,
know,
yeah, maybe it's something that you can develop. Like you have the ability if your inhibitions are down or if your
hmm
thinking mind is steps aside,
hmm
you have that ability. But the plant medicine helped you, see more clearly the facades. That's what's interesting.
yeah,
Or not a facade for Eric, but like his higher self or an
Mhm.
important side to himself was a
Mhm.
dragon.
And it's weird. Eric's been in my life for 30 years, which is very interesting as well. And I met Eric through my college roommate. They were best friends, and that's how we became friends. So, yeah, it's a very, very interesting path, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah, sometimes it takes time for our friends, or in this case, you, it took you a while to really understand what he was talking about. Like I have a neighbor for 10 years, and he was one of the first guys I worked on for Reiki, and it really helped him, but I don't think he really knew how much till in the past couple of years.
Mhm.
And then suddenly he reached out to me and he said, I want to thank you for what you did for me years ago because I really changed my life since then. He
Mhm.
left a toxic marriage. He was able to, and then he started getting more into spirituality. And then he finally got to the point where he wanted to learn Reiki also. And he
Mhm.
reached out to me. He's like, "I want to learn all of it." And I was like, "Really? What happened? You've been quiet all these years." He's like, I've been practicing and I'm ready. I'm ready to do more.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
where did this guy live?
In Virginia, he was a neighbor of mine up in Northern Virginia, and we've
Mhm.
known each other a long time. And this year he's going to take Reiki Master at the end of the year. So here's another interesting thing. When I first met him, I said, "Well, you need to meditate. You need to calm your mind." He's like, "I can't do that. I just fall asleep."
Mhm.
I was like, "Okay." Well, when he reached out to me to get Reiki training, he says, "Oh, I meditate all the time and I see all these things now." So he doesn't fall asleep anymore. So he's really evolved and practiced and he's gotten better at it.
Mhm.
So you can
Mhm.
do that. You can be completely terrible at meditation. You could fall asleep. You could, just be frustrated and give up. But if you just practice, just keep at it, you're gonna get better.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I've been having a lot of dreams, I've had a lot of dreams lately. I had to think about what the dreams were, but had some very interesting dreams, to say the least. Um, so, where do we go? How do we use this? How do we, you know, maybe we're doing what we're supposed to do. I don't know. I always feel like there's something more we could do. I'm that type of person. How do I push this to the limit,
Me too. I'm the same way. How do you reach more people? How do you help more people?
Yeah.
So yeah, good stuff.
And
Well,
supposedly, and supposedly this is the most interesting time in the world right now,
I believe it.
you know. So I guess we shall see what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
So any more mushroom journeys in your future?
I don't know. I mean, Eric wants me to come out to Hawaii, and I think you're going out to Hawaii. Um, and you should see him, but I don't know, potentially. We'll see. In my mind right now, it doesn't say, "Hey, go for it,"
Yeah,
but if I get there and show up and it makes sense, maybe I'll do it.
maybe not have the devil around you while you're journeying. That would be a plus.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's weird is that person, I think, was running for mayor of Malibu, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting. But I do know this. The other funny experience was the next day after the journey, we went back to the house and he had about 20 people there, and he's channeling this supposable Indian, right? And he goes around the room and he tells all these people, and I don't know if I've told you this story, but he tells all these people that, about who they are and what they are and so forth. And I never raised my hand. So he went around the whole room, talked to everybody, and then he kind of pinned me down, and he said something. I can't remember how he said it or what he said. He just said something. He's telling me that your spirit animal is Genghis Khan, which I found very, very, or not spirit animal, but spirit guide. Was spirit guide?
Mm-hmm.
Spirit guide. My spirit guide was Genghis Khan, which I thought was interesting. It's like he had to tell me that because I didn't raise my hand or anything like that. So that was very interesting the next day when I went to their house.
I don't know if I'd want Genghis Khan to be my spirit guide,
I know, right?
but
Well, I mean, you think about these things, how the people are portrayed in history. What
yeah,
was, he was portrayed as a killer, and portrayed, but, was that narrative changed? Was it manipulated? Was he doing it for other reasons? Because natives supposedly, and I think you told me this, you said natives and Asians were the only types of people that live in both worlds at the time. They lived in the
right.
spirit world and lived in the real world at the same time. Is that something you told me, or I don't know where I heard that?
Probably.
But if that was the case, then, what was he thinking at that time and why he was doing what he was doing?
What was he really fighting?
I have no
They
idea.
ask they portray him as a conqueror,
Mm-hmm.
but do we really know what he was actually fighting? You know? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so you can't trust history at all. You
Mm-hmm.
can't trust the stories.
Yeah. So maybe there was some truth in that. I don't know. Maybe the
Yeah.
guy, but I do remember this, the guy who was supposed to had the abilities, he was clear. he was very clear. I didn't see anything bad in him. It was just his wife, and then what I saw in Eric.
That's good. I'm not a big fan of channeling.
Really?
No, because I feel like people think they're channeling something good and they could be easily manipulated because their discernment is off.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not assessing, they're not being careful enough, allowing this being to communicate through them. And it could be a trickster type being pretending to be of the light.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like channeling. I don't do it myself. And there are people who do, there's all sorts of channeling, but there's people that step aside and let the being come in their body. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
big no-no for me. I would never do that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Even if it was for Jesus or Mary Magdalene, I probably would. Actually, you
Yeah.
don't need to. You don't need to step aside. You can still be there and hear the messages, but I don't like that
Yeah, and
whole,
is that a true message too? Is
yeah,
that somewhere in an intermediate position in the world that didn't quite get to the right place?
yeah. And one warning sign are people who say they only want to deal with light beings and the light, and they completely ignore any shadow side, dark stuff. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
people I actually don't trust because they're not balanced. Do you know what I mean? Like we have light and we have dark. You can't just ignore the dark stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like a bypassing denial thing. And then that's what the dark loves is they'll take advantage of those people
Mm-hmm.
because those people refuse to believe that they're channeling anything but good.
Mm-hmm. And I've had this thought process too about everything in between. Like I went to this voodoo store in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, and you talk about those elements of good and bad. But for some reason, I've had this thought process of, the voodoo and all that stuff are elements of everything, but it's a very mediocre position. And the only thing that drives that is the fear of the people that are recognizing it. And it's a very weak position first. And that's something that's, I don't know, I've had a rationale about that. All these elements of real-time elements of evil or whatever you think it is, I think are very weak position because it's pulling from elements of good and bad. And it's driven by fear.
Yeah, well,
So,
I'm so glad you brought up voodoo because I was telling a story to my friends the other night about Marie Laveau. And when last time I went to New Orleans, Marie Laveau came forward and I talked with her. But Marie Laveau is the voodoo queen, right? That's what she's known as.
yeah.
And then one of my friends pops in and says, "Oh, I've read about Marie Laveau and she was doing all these evil things." And I was looking at her like, that's not resonating with me. That's not the being that was talking to me." They'll write, and if you find a powerful woman, they'll try to trash her in any way possible.
Hmm.
And I said, "Do you really believe that article you wrote? I mean, you read about her. I don't believe it because that's not how she felt like to me. To me, she felt like an embodiment of divine feminine energy,
Hmm.
that she represented divine feminine energy, and that was her city. So she was almost coming forward and greeting me in a benevolent way, not like territorial or anything negative.
Hmm.
So I told her, I was like, don't believe everything that you read and hear about a person. Just like with Genghis Khan, we really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
what his mission was, what his purpose was. Maybe he was just trashed by the historians as evil because he
Mhm.
was a powerful Asian man, or
Yeah.
because Marie Laveau was a powerful Black woman.
Mhm.
They do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they don't have any other. It can never. The narrative is never good,
Hmm.
ever.
Hmm.
So if you take the law of percentages and say everything is bad, I don't know. I don't think everything is bad. I don't think
Right.
you know every narrative in the news, every narrative we see in real time is usually negative anyway. So
Right.
sometimes you got to divide that by two and subtract 50%, then you might get some type of real answer.
I think the best thing is if you hear a narrative, ask yourself, does this feel true? You
Hmm.
always have to go back to yourself.
Yeah.
Does this
Yeah.
feel true? Does this feel right? Does this feel off? And if you're interested in it, research it, read about it, and then check in again. Does this feel right?
Yeah. And I think if you see somebody that's dark, they're dark.
Hmm.
There's just something about them. They just have a different, it's almost like there's no cognitive thinking at all in most dark people, you know, and I think, if you can pick the non-cognitive evil, positions, or non-cognitive thinkers, and they were in an evil position, they probably are what they are. And and I don't know, to rationalize that, I mean, I think it's like the elevator don't go to the top, it's a one
Hmm.
track position
Hmm.
type of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So are you encountering people like that?
No, I watched this, documentary, and I don't remember this guy's name. The guy in England, um, that had sex with all those cadavers and young girls, and sleeping people. I can't remember the name of the
Was
guy.
he in the entertainment business, like a comedian?
Something like that. But like
Yeah.
he would parade the streets, and he did this for 30 years, and he was doing bad things the whole time he was doing this. And I don't know, there was something about that personality that I said, that's a modern day devil walking the streets. And it's almost like he knew it.
Hmm.
And he was able to get away with it because he was so in front. He was out front ahead of it, and it did, and very visible publicly, and didn't care.
Or
And,
there were probably signs there was something wrong, but people either protected him or dismissed their feelings,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So I think, that only happens every now and then where I would think that, but that's what I thought of that guy,
Yeah.
just how his mannerisms and how he acted and so forth, and was meeting the king and queen of England and all this kind of stuff doing things at a very high level, you know,
Hmm.
uh, but behind closed doors, it was not a good situation. So yeah, that's one. I've never been around one that extreme, but that was one that stood out to me.
I'm trying to think if I have. I just don't run in those circles.
Yeah,
I keep really good people around me,
yeah,
really high vibrational people. I don't want to. The only dark stuff I'm dealing with is on a spiritual level once in a while. And
mm-hmm.
it's because people are coming to me for help,
Mm-hmm.
and I deal with it as I come, but
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they come find me,
Yeah.
then you deal
Well,
with it.
Well, when I looked you up, you were I don't know, you were the most least advertised person on the internet in this area. But then when I looked at you, I was like, I don't know. I just called you first for some reason. That was the only phone call I made. But I thought there was a lot of fake positions in that healing space in this area.
Yeah.
Very, very commercialized.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to change that. I'm going to become more advertised because I'm getting my website redone. And
Well, I think you can be advertised if you have the right narrative. I think people will see the difference in the narrative compared to something
yeah.
that's real and something that's not completely real.
And then people know about me, and I have never met them before. And like I was telling you earlier, um, people recommend me. I've never met them before. I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't normally recommend people that I don't know. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
That I haven't worked with or know how they work, or I'm kind of careful about that, but there are people recommending me out there locally, never met me before.
Hmm.
So there must be a word of mouth, local reputation. If people
Yeah.
talk to each other, you know, and you help them, they'll tell other people about you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you resonated with Eric. I mean, very similar narrative of to me. I mean, he's a little more extreme. But yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I think people know, how things resonate, the narrative, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Um, unless you're just completely naive to everything. And you may not, and you may need to go through a couple situations to get to the right person.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people like that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can people find you, John? Because I know that you've got a bunch of different Facebook pages, and you have the podcast, so where they can find uh
Yeah, just anything about my company. We're a Meta partner. We're one of the biggest publishers on social media, believe it or not. So you can just find all that information at bangproductionstv.com, bangproductionstv.com, and that will give you pretty much a full story on me, what my business is, what we do, and the media we put out. And yeah, that's probably the easiest place to go.
yeah. Well, thanks, John, for being on the podcast.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, it was. I think that's a very interesting story. Um, it's in the books now, so we'll see. We'll see in 5 years if I'm speaking somewhere, doing something different. And we'll be, hey, what's this guy talking about?
It's
It's
out
all
there
true. It's
now. You
all true.
can't take
Yeah,
it. Everybody knows now,
yeah,
John, that you saw the
yeah,
devil.
yeah. It's all true. At least I'm on the right side. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, and hopefully the story will resonate.
Yeah, it's always fun talking with you.
Cool. Cool.